Abandoned baby moose in need of help meets an unlikely hero in the nick of time. Most dog owners know their pooches would make friends with just about anyone or anything. If another dog passes by, Old Blues is likely to give her a cordial sniff and a friendly lick as he would a thief knocking on the front door of the family home. Still, sometimes a dog's friendliness can stun even the most dedicated dog lovers. For instance, way up toward the northern tip of Maine, a dog owner and her family had seen their dog shake his tail with delight at the numerous guests that stayed on their family-owned campground. But the dog's reaction to a surprise visitor on the campground created an unforgettable moment for her entire family. As an owner and operator of Ludgen Lodge, a family-owned camp in rural Wallgrass, Maine, Shannon Ludgen dealt regularly with animals from the surrounding woods. But in June 2018, she met an animal that truly stood out from the rest. The encounter started at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Through the early morning silence of the campground, while camping kids still slept from the previous day's activities, Shannon heard an alarming sound. The calls cutting through the campgrounds belonged to a baby moose. Shannon supposed the little girl was calling out for her mother. After dubbing her Miss Maggie, Shannon decided she was going to help. But as much as she'd like to fix the moose's situation right then and there, Shannon couldn't just call out and summon her missing mother. This was one of those moments where nature had to run its course, until about 8 hours later. The campground owner called the local wardens. Two phenomenal wardens, Adrian and Nick, Shannon wrote on her Facebook, came over and we helped Miss Maggie back down to the brook in the shade. But the problem wasn't quite solved. The baby moose wandered back to the spot where he'd been crying so audibly at 5 a.m. that morning. The spot we think her mama had left her, Shannon wrote. Only minutes before, Shannon thought Miss Maggie was about to pick up on her mother's scent and solve the case herself, but they were back to square one. Against her instincts, Shannon left Miss Maggie alone. The 24-hour period passed, and on Sunday morning, she couldn't find a trace of the little girl. So she let her German Shepherd Leo out on the grounds. That was when the moose encounter turned truly spectacular. Leo strutted around the campgrounds only to stumble across Miss Maggie by accident. Yep, it turned out the moose hadn't been picked up by Mom in those passing hours. And Leo, curious dog that he was, wasted no time in checking her out. But the interaction didn't stop at a brief encounter. Leo and Miss Maggie came face to face and then nose to nose. He walked right over, Shannon wrote, and Miss Maggie and Leo became fast friends. Even better, the day's friendships had only begun to blossom. For the rest of that Sunday morning, Miss Maggie followed us around all day begging for attention, Shannon wrote, and after leaving her bee for 24 hours, the Ludgen family was happy to give in. Each member of the family posed for a picture with the 6-day-old, 27-pound moose that wandered so helplessly onto the campground, giving her all of the motherly love she'd been missing out on. Miss Maggie loved it. With the imaginary barrier between human and moose broken, thanks to a curious dog, Shannon launched into full-on mother mode. I fed her a grass, clover, water milkshake, she wrote. Then she called the veterinarian. The veterinarian recommended feeding her Lactaid, so Shannon obliged. Meanwhile, she reveled in the moose's unwavering kindness toward her, her family, and Leo the dog. You can't imagine how affectionate she was, she wrote. Later that afternoon, the wardens Adrian and Nick returned. Without the return of the mother, they could now, unfortunately, safely conclude Miss Maggie had been abandoned. This was a sad moment, but a great opportunity. The wardens arranged for Amanda Demuse, below, a biologist with the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, who dealt with a number of abandoned animals, to pick up Miss Maggie and bring her to the Maine Wildlife Park. There, caretakers could give her all she needed to grow up big and strong. Not a bad fate for an abandoned baby moose. In the end, the Ludgens learned an important lesson. If you give a moose a German Shepherd friend, she'll want a bit of human love to go with it.